Hi everyone. So this is a video about ranting, and I don't know how you feel about ranting, but I love a good rant. And I do love to rant. My children know this about me. I can really get going, especially on things like media and shows. Like they'll want to watch a show. I remember my daughter wanted to watch that show, Emily in Paris on Netflix. And I lived in Paris. Like I love Paris and I wanted to watch it. And then we sat down and we started watching it. And I just could not stop myself. And I just started going off about how it was just like playing to all these stereotypes, and not only stereotypes about France, but stereotypes about Americans and stereotypes about women and blah blah and this, that, and the other. And she was like, okay, you've ruined it for me. I don't want to watch this with you anymore. And then she went and watched it by herself, and I lost that time with her. But honestly, I don't think I could have watched Emily in Paris. Not at that point. My point is that my daughter was not the audience for that rant. Okay. At that point, I probably just should have enjoyed watching that show with her, but I didn't. I ranted, and yet there is an audience. I feel confident that there is an audience out there who would have been very much in alignment with my ranting about that show. And as a matter of fact, if you look it up, there's definitely a lot of ranting about Emily in Paris. Okay. And a rant is not like a review, right? Like me going off on Emily in Paris and just kind of talking about how much it irritates me, or this, that, and the other. That's different than me sort of taking a point of view and saying, from a feminist perspective, Emily in Paris does this, and this, right? Not that you can't rant in a review, or that a review can't be a rant. It can, right? So a lot of these types of forms, they overlap. And a lot of it has to do with tone, voice, persona, message, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, context, okay? For this assignment, you are going to be ranting, right? You can rant about a show if you want to. And you might add some reviewy type things in there. But really, it's about, how do you feel about this thing? What bugs you about it? Or what do you love? Because I could go into a full-on rant about how much I love Emily in Paris. Why is it the best show for young people who want to travel the world? And I can't go there, but you know what I'm saying, right? So I could do a rant of love, but we usually call that something else. And so what I'm going to do, let me just share my screen with you. So what you're going to do is you are going to write an opinion piece that is a rant. And there's lots of different kinds of opinion pieces, right? Like you might have read letters to the editor or editorial pieces like in the New York Times, or even like a personal essay can be an opinion piece. But a rant is a particular kind of an opinion piece. And what it does is it expresses a position, and it's also about how do you feel about this subject, right? It's often passionate, but it can also be witty, humorous, entertaining. Like me, Emily in Paris. I know you guys were just dying of laughter. I'm joking, but you know what I mean, right? The point of a rant is to engage the audience, to communicate the writer's frustration about an issue. And that can be about something as detailed or as deep as the latest political kerfuffle, or it could be about, if you say you were like writing a blog about toothpaste, which I imagine it's out there, it could be about the release of a new tooth whitening strip and like how much something about this tooth whitening strip gets on your last nerve, right? Or how much you love it. So that's what you've got here. Is these are just different ways to kind of start to dig into that, and then to organize it, to figure out the kind of language you want to use. You can use stronger language than you normally would in a rant, right? But you have to keep to your persona. So while you, in your review, for example, you might have started out with general language that was objective, where you said something like, the cafe on La Cienega Boulevard is really delicious, and I suggest that you go for the, caramel macchiato if you really want a tasty treat. Then you might have developed that a little bit with some persona, and some character. My favorite restaurant is, the Cafe Blah Blah on La Cienega Boulevard. As my mother once told me, I am a caffeine freak, and I come from a long line of caffeine freaks. And so the caramel macchiato would be my recommendation for you if you go and visit La Cienega Cafe, right? Then a rant would take that to the next level. Out of all the cafes in Los Angeles, I love the La Cienega Cafe and their caramel macchiato. And, I would go to this cafe over and over and over again and get this caramel macchiato. But the last time I went to La Cienega Cafe, the caramel macchiato that I got was probably the most disgusting excuse for a coffee that I have ever received in my entire life. And not only that, when I brought that to the manager's attention, they told me I was wrong and they threw me out the door. And then you would go off and you would roll with that, right? So you can use adjectives, descriptive language, and also that sort of defines your persona. Now, if I'm talking about how I'm getting aggressive at the manager and they're throwing me out the door just because of a caramel macchiato, the persona that I'm expressing is also fairly aggressive, right? So if I have not created that persona in the rest of my blog, then that is going to feel really weird. You know what I'm saying? So just make sure that as you are developing your rant, you don't have to self-edit along the way. You can just go for it in your draft, just like write things and just see what comes out. But then as you revise, you might want to tone it down. You might want to think about, how do I, what actually is the best language for me here? What's the best way to say this, right? What most fits? And so I really like, this WikiHow article, which really kind of goes through a rant. And, you don't have to be quite so aggressive as they kind of have it here, right? Or so detailed. You can also look at the readings that I have here. And you can check out, these different blogs. And let's see, here's a good one. So I love Gary, I don't know how to say, Steingart. He's a writer, and I don't really read his writing, but I do read his blog because he's hilarious. He travels all over the world. He loves food. He loves to drink, and he's just kind of just rolling on and talking about himself. Gary's Journey Through Hell. And so he kind of just rants about everything. Here he is, Gary's Poolside Summer Reading Club. Go literature. I mean, I'm feeling Gary just looking at the title of his blog, the title of this post, Go Literature, and this picture of Gary. I'm getting him. You know what I mean? I get who he is. I get his persona. I get where he's coming from, right? So this is just, I wanted to show you this about his persona. And then I wanted to go here, which is what the fuck is happening in Russia, right? Bear with me while I explain. Here is Gary. He actually does write a lot about Russia and Eastern Europe because he was born in Leningrad and grew up there for the first 7 years of his life, and he lives in New York. And so here he is explaining and writing a piece about Russia, right? But he's kind of like going off on it as well. And let's see. So as you go through some of his posts, you might find some ranting in there, okay? And then what else did I want to show you? Oh, Liz Hodgson as well. We hate you, buy our stuff, right? The woke capitalism paradox. She's got an image here, and she just starts like going on and ranting and talking about these ideas about Bud Light's decision to collaborate with Audrey Hepburn impersonator Dylan Mulvaney. Okay, this is a totally random subject, I would say, right? I know who Dylan Mulvaney is. And Dylan Mulvaney is a trans TikToker influencer. And the way that Liz is talking about this, she says, it's hard to overstate the marketing catastrophe of Bud Light's decision to collaborate with Audrey Hepburn impersonator Dylan Mulvaney. It should be studied as a worst case scenario in business schools for generations. Okay, how do we know that this is going to be a rant? Well, I mean, I think it's pretty much set up by it should be studied as a worst case scenario in business schools for generations. That pretty much tells us that this person is going to go off on their idea of what is working and what is not on this subject. Okay. Also, I just want to make sure that, I don't necessarily agree or disagree with any of the content here. I'm just showing you various ways in which you can, look at these different rants. Okay. So, I would say this is what Liz writes about, right? And her piece here is the woke capitalism paradox. So that's what she's writing about. It's like, how can you be capitalist and then also have this wokeness, and how do these things come together just really badly in so many ways, in so many different marketing campaigns, right? So, this is a great thing to rant about because honestly, advertising is endlessly horrible and something to rant on, right? But when we look, high culture in low times, okay, this is what she's writing about. This is her blog. This is her persona, right? And so, dispatches from the culture wars. Things are getting ugly out there, right? So we know that she says, no, seriously, even that title is about this idea of kind of ranting, right? I never knew civilizational death could be this funny. This is her about page. So, so she talks about who she is, right? Born and raised in Calgary, Liz has written anything and everything. As a contract copywriter, she once wrote for M&M Food Market, the highlight of which was composing a meta description about frozen patties in 150 characters, including spaces. So we know that she is a former journalist who turned her attention to fiction. She has a novel that she's got coming out, but really she's writing just about things that she is thinking about and that she wants to talk about and build an audience with. And this is what we've got here. Okay, these are different rants. So take a look at these, find your own rants, right? There are so many rants in the world, and you can look up even like best rants of all time. I love this. Sports rants, interestingly, were like I looked this up because I wanted to be like, oh, what are the best rants, you know? And like there were so many just sports rants and then movie rants, and I was like, this is not 100% relevant to what we're doing here. But you know, you can look up different kinds of rants. I would watch some. I would just kind of like get an idea of how rants are performed, because they are very performative. Okay. But also you want to keep it in the tone of your blog. Okay, so I really like this, where the best rants manage to express the keen edge of a writer's feelings while maintaining a deliberate and consistent tone that does not alienate the writer's audience. If you have a very aggressive audience, like Tucker Carlson, for example, who I would say is one of the larger ranters of our time right now, you know, then going off is not going to alienate your audience, right? It's going to keep them coming back. But if you're writing about love and relationships or ice cream, then maybe you want to moderate the tone of your rant, you know? So take a look at this and have fun with it. Okay? Have a good time with creating your rant and finding something to go off on. All right. I look forward to seeing what you come up with, and let me know if you have any questions. Take care.